Welcome everyone to another Convicts and Cops episode, and I wish you all a happy, safe, and drama-free Labor Day weekend. We are tapping into a detailed profile of Mapa Lopez from East Side Clover, one of the oldest Mexican Mafia members by age in their infamous history. Only Vago Estrada from Fort Maravilla, another East LA boy, was older than our featured guy. Before we begin, how about I share with you a quick fix from our sponsor from the book of Proverbs, chapter 1 and verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Manuel Lopez was born on April 3rd, 1928, in Los Angeles, California. What a common name this is, don't you all agree? I bet if you look in any phone book or simply Google Manuel Lopez, you'll get thousands of hits. One of many Mexican versions of John Smith. On the streets of LA, Manuel Lopez became known as Mapa from East Side Clover. As stated, Mapa is only one of 3 Mexican Mafia members born in the 1920s. We'll call it the Roaring Twenties. The other 2 are Alfredo Vago Estrada, born on February 10th, 1928, and Joe Morgan, born April 10th, 1929. Both of these latter 2 were from Maravilla, by the way. Like Joe Morgan, Mapa was first locked up for a murder at the age of 16. On June the 3rd, 1944, yes, you heard that right, 1944. The night watchman for the Los Angeles Times was stabbed to death. John Hovey had served in his post as the Times night watchman for 20 years. He was on his way home early in the morning when he exited a streetcar at Beaudry Avenue and Sunset Boulevard. There, Hovey bumped into Mapa and his crime partner, 16-year-old James Chavez. A fight ensued when Mr. Hovey was stabbed repeatedly, and he defended himself by striking the boys with his metal lunch pail. Everett W. Edenburn and Willard Peterson were in a hotel located at 1040 Sunset Boulevard when they heard screams for help. When they left the hotel to see what was happening, they observed Mr. Hovey fighting with 2 boys. When the men walked towards the fight, the assailants fled from the crime scene. Mr. Hovey was taken inside the hotel lobby and administered first aid until the police and an ambulance arrived. Mr. Hovey died the following day from his wounds. But before he died, he told investigating officers that the assault was pure meanness, as there was no attempt of robbery. Detectives found a trail of blood that led away from the crime scene to the Elysian district. Apparently, Mr. Hovey had injured his attackers with his metal lunch pail. Police maintained 24-hour surveillance of the area, seeking any individuals displaying injuries. On June the 8th, officers observed Mapa and Chavez driving by with their arms bandaged. Officers initiated a pursuit and ran the car off the road. Mapa and Chavez admitted to the murder of Hovey. They took officers to their home, located at 1831 Molvina Street in the Elysian Park area, and surrendered the knife used in the fatal stabbing. The murder of Hovey was not the only crime committed that night by Mapa and Chavez. Together with 2 other boys, 15-year-old Frank Torres and 14-year-old Alex Torres, were arrested and accused of assault with a deadly weapon for the non-fatal stabbing of Jacinto Perez. On November 1st, 1944, Mapa and Chavez pled guilty to second-degree murder in juvenile court and were turned over to the California Youth Authority for incarceration. The California Youth Authority was established in 1941. The CYA's mission statement was a desire to replace retribution and punishment with treatment and training. I have always maintained that if you live long enough, you will see the pendulum swing from the emphasis on punishment to rehabilitation. There has to be a dose of both of these to appease society, bring justice, and hopefully accomplish rehabilitation. Unfortunately, the California Youth Authority became a breeding ground for aspiring bad boys and future career criminals. This environment only nurtured the anger and violence that was simmering beneath a young and tender veneer, seeking to erupt like a volcano. Mapa was sent to Preston's School of Industries in Ione, California, to serve out his sentence. On September 25, 1945, Mapa and 2 wards escaped from Preston. A news article described the 3 boys as zoot suiters and pachucos. Mapa was described as 17 years old, 5 feet 6 inches tall, brown eyes, black hair, with knife scars on left temple, right cheek, nose, and right eye. Even at this young age, Mapa was a veteran of many violent confrontations, and as we can see, these events were etched on his face and head. One other interesting item included in the news article is that one of the other boys was described as having the number 13 tattooed on the back of his right hand. Mexican gang history in the City of the Angels teaches us that vatos locos, crazy dudes, engaged in la vida loca, the crazy life, well before the 1957 formation of the Mexican Mafia. Chicano gang members adopted the number 13, representing the letter M, as a reference to the enjoyment of smoking marijuana, thus explaining the tattoo. The escape was short-lived, and Mapa was returned to Preston. On February 10, 1946, the rabbit blood resurfaced, and once again, Mapa and 3 other wards escaped from Preston through a bathroom window at approximately 7 o'clock p.m. On February 12, 1946, the 4 boys, 2 Chicanos and 2 black wards, approached ranch hand Tom Ford at 4 p.m., 2 miles east of Clements on Ione Road, saying their car had broke down. When Ford told the boys that no one was home, they entered the Miller house, forcing him into a closet. When the Miller's 10-year-old grandson returned from school, he and Ford were ordered to sit on a couch while one of the boys stood guard over the pair holding a shotgun they stole from the home. Upon the arrival of Mr. Miller and his wife, they were told by the boys that they had nothing to fear if they were fed and taken to Stockton. The boys ransacked the house, taking $30 and clothes, which they changed into before they departed. Mr. Miller transported the boys at knife point to Wilson Way and Waterloo Road. Once again, Mapa's freedom was short-lived, and all the escapees were recaptured in Los Angeles after stealing a car. This time, the consequences were more significant for Mapa. His Disneyland ride came to an abrupt halt, and the authorities took off the kids' gloves. On June 25, 1946, Mapa was remanded to the Adult Authority, the California Department of Corrections. At the young age of 18, San Quentin welcomed him with open arms. During this time, San Quentin was the reception center for the CDC. You are viewing the San Quentin prisoner logbook, where newly arrived convicts were recorded and assigned their prison numbers. During this time, Central Files, or C-Files, as they are more commonly known, had not been implemented, and each prison had a logbook detailing the history of the convicts they housed. Mapa was assigned number A4007, convicted of car theft in Los Angeles and sentenced to serve a term of 1 to 5 years. On September 18, 1946, while still at San Quentin, Mapa registered for the draft. If you look closely, one of the sections directs the registrant to enter the name and address of someone who will always know your address, and someone typed in SQ, short for San Quentin. His signature is located at the bottom of the registration card. The back of the registration card provides a physical description: 5 foot 7 inches, 145 pounds, brown eyes, black hair, and light brown complexion. After a few years, Mapa paroled and was back on Broadway. Just like his previous escape attempts, Mapa's freedom on parole was short-lived. In January of 1949, Mapa and two crime partners robbed the Cooney liquor store located at 929 South San Gabriel Boulevard. Mapa was convicted of first-degree robbery and sentenced to 5 years to life. He was received at San Quentin on March 29, 1949, for processing and assignment to a prison to serve out his term. Mapa was designated to Folsom Prison and was received on April 8, 1949, at just 21 years old. Folsom Prison also kept a prisoner's logbook to keep track of the prisoner's movements to and from the facility. Mapa was still under his original number of A4007, but had an A added to the end of his number. CDC used to employ the practice of adding a letter at the end of a prisoner's number after every new conviction. If you look down at the bottom of Mapa's record, in 1950, he was sentenced to 0 to 10 years for ADW, which is assault with a deadly weapon, thus the addition of the A at the end of his prison number. Now let's get into the detail of the assault. On September 27, 1950, Mapa attacked Leonard the Sheik Thompson with a 23-foot-long iron rod, knocking him unconscious. Sheik Thompson was no slouch, so a metal rod was absolutely necessary to bring this badass rock down. Mapa was initially charged with Penal Code 4500, which mandated an automatic death penalty for any prisoner serving a life sentence that commits an assault that was likely to result in great bodily injury or death. Later, because many juries were hesitant to sentence offenders to death, the penal code was revised to allow a jury a second sentencing option of life in prison. Mapa pled to a lesser charge and was sentenced to serve 1 to 10 years to run consecutively with his prior term. On a Sheik Thompson side note, Eddie Bunker was a Mexican Mafia and Aryan Brotherhood associate and jailhouse lawyer back in the day. Eddie describes Sheik Thompson in his autobiography and book titled Education of a Felon. Here is a quick excerpt. Quote, Sheik Thompson is the most hated and most unbelievable man I have ever known. Sheik was some kind of throwback. If ever the term animal fit any human being, it had to be Sheik. When I first went to San Quentin, Sheik worked outside the walls at the rock quarry, making little ones from big ones. It was a mile outside the walls up a gentle grade, but still a grade. He jogged under a wooden yoke. When that got too easy, he put 100-pound convict on his shoulders. Sheik never weighed more than 170 pounds, yet on Labor Day, when San Quentin held a track meet in the morning and a boxing card in the afternoon, Sheik would run the 440, 880, and mile in the morning. After lunch, he would fight for the middleweight, lightweight, and heavyweight titles. Sometimes he won, sometimes he lost, but I cannot recall him ever being stopped. End of quote. The abiding hatred for Sheik was not due to his animal physical abilities, but rather it was a response to his animalistic attitude. Every word he spoke was a challenge, radiant with rage. He was both a homosexual and informer who put convict Clifford Jefferson on death row. That's where he inherited the name Death Row Jeff. So let's get back to Mapa. Mapa was stuck in CDC's revolving door and doing life on the installment plan. He paroled but was returned to the concrete jungles on a second-degree robbery conviction out of San Jose, but Mapa didn't intend on staying put. On July 11, 1969, Mapa escaped from the Vallecito Conservation Camp in Calaveras County. He was last seen at 4 a.m. and was discovered missing at 5 o'clock. During this time, an escape would usually only add another year to a sentence. Therefore, hardcore convicts felt like they had very little to lose by escaping. Mapa hit the newspapers once again after another escape from Canocti Conservation Camp in Lake County. On May 24, 1971, at 4:30 p.m., he was reported missing from a work crew clearing brush on Bottle Rock Road near Kellysville. Mapa was serving a sentence for a narcotics conviction from San Bernardino he picked up while on the run from his last escape. It shouldn't surprise anyone that Mapa was a hope-to-die tecato, heroin user, and he loved shooting black. I don't care what anybody tells you, heroin was an integral part of the Mexican gang culture. Mapa was recaptured in Los Angeles on unrelated charges. It was discovered he was an escapee and was returned to San Quentin in August 1971. This is where and when I met old man Mapa. There were several guys from La M, and us younger members referred to Mapa as old man. Most of us youngsters were in our 20s. The old vatos were typically in their 40s already, and they included Mapa, Rupe Soto, Sonny B, Vago, Ponchi from Mateo Street, Joe Morgan, and a few others in San Quentin and Folsom. These were all old-ass fools to us. Nevertheless, we respected these OGs. Mapa was the author of a phrase, "Don't be so mean." He was fond of this saying, and many of us copied him, and this became a greeting and expression amongst the fellas. We even signed greeting cards and photographs with Mapa's "Don't be so mean" expression. One day on the Adjustment Center yard, some of us lined up in position to do a hit on BGF member Big Rob Williams. Big Rob had caught MM member Sleepy Betancourt in the visiting room with his handcuffs on, while Rob's cuffs were being removed. He Sunday punched Sleepy and knocked him out with one punch. So on this day, Mapa, Sailor Boy, myself, and other MA guys were on the AC yard, and a basketball game was about to be set up. Big Rob and one of his comrades were asked to join the game, and the teams would be decided by free throws. The game never started because at a prearranged signal, Sailor Boy and I attacked Big Rob, stabbing him non-fatally. The plan had called for Mapa to grab Big Rob from behind at the free throw line, grab him in a bear hug, and hold him so that Sailor and I could do our thing. The idea, of course, is to send him to Brazil to kill him. The timing misfired. Mapa somehow got sidetracked, and Sailor and I went on to stab Big Rob repeatedly. But this was not Big Rob's day to die. Mapa got caught up in the melee and was not able to carry out his role, or so I thought. Sergeant Bill Hankins, the first institutional gang investigator and pioneer in prison gangs, later would reveal in his autobiography Alpha Guard that Mapa was already an informant. In 1973, the CDC director Raymond Procunier had created the director's caseload to lock down violent prison gang members and leaders to try to stop the violence that had rocked CDC in 1972. Convicts on director's caseload status were placed in lockdown units and were not to be released without the express consent of the director. Mapa had been placed on this director's caseload at Folsom Prison. The director's caseload was periodically reviewed to assess a convict's status. The warden at Folsom Prison reached out to Sergeant Hankins and informed him that Mapa had provided valuable information regarding MA activities, and he believed he could continue to do so if he was released from the director's caseload. Sergeant Hankins recommended that Mapa be released, and the director agreed. He was subsequently transferred to San Quentin. In 1975, California Senator John Nedgley sponsored California's Senate Bill 42, the Uniform Determinate Sentencing Act. This would convert all indeterminate sentences to fixed, defined sentences for all except the sentences of life and death. The bill was not actually passed until 1976, but CDC saw the writing on the wall and began reviewing case files and offering RUAPs, release upon approval of parole plans, to eligible convicts. Mapa and I and many other MM members were paroled, and in 1975 we began operating throughout California. Mapa and others were in the San Francisco area. Joe Morgan established a heroin and cocaine pipeline through Jesus Araujo, aka Chuy, who was the head of the Araujo family in Tijuana. This is before they were called cartels. Chuy was one of the elder statesmen and OG members of one of many Mexican drug trafficking organizations that would come down the pike. Acting on our impending drug flow to the fellas, Sailor and I drove to various locations throughout California: Bakersfield, Visalia, Fresno, Hayward, and San Francisco, to deliver samples of the heroin we would be supplying the embedded carnales in those Central and Northern California areas. Sometime in September of 1975, Sailor and I arrived in San Francisco and were made aware Mapa was hospitalized due to a heroin use accident. Mapa had apparently used a cigarette filter in lieu of a cotton to absorb the fix of carga. The fiber somehow traveled into Mapa's brain, causing his hospitalization and ultimate death. Sailor and I visited Mapa in the hospital prior to his passing. Although Mapa was conscious, he could only speak in gibberish, and I could not understand him. In our world, anything could be fixed. Any foreseeable problem had a quick solution, an M solution. Murder and extreme violence were our rapid answer to any dilemma. But in this case, there was no one to kill or torture to fix this issue with Mapa. Sailor and I felt helpless. The old man lingered on for a few months until he passed away on April 30th, 1976. Mapa died at the young age of 48 years old. Another life wasted and another drug-related tragic story that started with the dreaded dragon. Don't be so mean, Mapa. I love your crazy old ass and I hope you made it to the right destination. Only God knows. Good night to everyone and God bless you.